All right, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live today. I'm Ashley Bernardi, the founder and CEO of Nardi Media. I am so excited for our conversation today. We've actually planned this for a while. I'm joined by the incredible Marie Incontrera. She's a leading expert in thought leadership and speaking strategy. She is also my speaking strategist. Marie is the founder of Incontrera Consulting, where she helps experts, entrepreneurs, and executives land speaking engagements that move the needle in their careers. So that includes TEDx speakers, best-selling authors, thought leaders across the industries, guiding them to step into bigger stages and share their messages with the world. This is something that you, as you know, in Nardi Media, we can get behind. So today we're going to talk about how to effectively talk about what you do, whether you're on a stage or in the media. And we're going to explore why consistency matters, how to tell stories that stick, how to speak to your audience's pain points to turn them into clients. And also, this is something I love, the intersection of PR and speaking and how they complement each other. So Marie, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here and happy to be talking to you today.
Okay, so let's dive in. I want to, and thank you so much. Tell our audience just a little bit about you, like your background and how you got started as a speaking agent.
Yeah, so I have been in business for 9 years, and actually 9 years and a couple months. It'll be exactly that bizanniversary. And I got started completely by accident. I don't have a business degree. I actually have a music degree. I spent my 20s as a working jazz musician. And one day I got a text message from my very good friend, Dory Clark. And it said, "I have an idea for you. I think you should quit your job." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" And she said, "Well, you're really good at marketing and social media and all of that stuff in your music career. Why don't you try being a virtual assistant and see if you could put some of those skills to use?" And literally the rest is history. I quit my job with 2 clients for 5 hours a week, no safety net, no funding, no nothing. My very first day in business was May 16th, 2016, which is significant because it was my 30th and a half birthday.
Wow.
And the rest is history. I have a thriving business now. And my first client, one of my very first clients, who is a dear friend and still with me actually, first came to me because he wanted to be on a TEDx stage. And I barely knew what a TED Talk was. I thought you had to be famous to do one and all of that. And he said, "Do you think you could help me?" And I said, "Well, I'll try." No guarantees. And by the end of the month, he had been placed on 2 stages, one that he had pitched and one that I had pitched. And from there, how it just literally grew client by client, service by service. Now I do a few things. I do social media and digital marketing and kind of all things getting on in front of audiences online, and then speaking. So I help people get on global stages, and I help business owners get on stages that will grow their businesses.
Incredible, Marie. I mean, 9 years, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
You've got, I'm sure you're thanking your friend for saying that. What a great idea you had 9 years ago to start the business. And we're celebrating our 10 years. So I do know as a business owner what a huge accomplishment that is. It's so impressive. And so let's dive into a little bit more about speaking. So you talk about consistency.
Yes.
Why is consistency so important when showing up on the stage or in the media? Tell us a little bit about that.
That's a great question. So 2 things. First of all, there is so much noise everywhere on TV, online, on conference stages and all of that. There are 250 in-person events every year, 250,000 in-person events every year in the United States. So if you're getting on one stage a year, first of all, you're not going to be very practiced. And second of all, you're not going to get a lot of attention for one stage.
Right.
One LinkedIn post, how many people see it? Right? It's kind of the same thing. And so you have to be consistent to be getting your message out there, because this is a numbers game. The more people you get in front of, the more clients you get, the more conversations you have, the more chances that you're in front of your ideal clients or referral partners who can grow your business. Right. So you really do have to be doing it consistently, and you have to be getting on many, many stages, whether virtual or in person, to increase your chances of success.
I love that because it's exactly what we say for PR too. Like just one interview on a national outlet, sure, that's amazing, but you do need to consistently be showing up because one, you're reaching different audiences, you're building your momentum, you're building your credibility, right? So I love that there's that synergy between speaking and PR. So what about like fears that people have? Because I do a lot of media training, and so everyone always has fears or roadblocks that prevent people from sharing their voice. And we work through that in media training. But I'm curious for you, what do you see as some of those roadblocks that prevent people from showing up regularly, and how can they overcome them?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's very common. Public speaking is the biggest fear over death, right? More people are afraid of public speaking and getting on stage than they are of actually dying. So, and there's a reason for that, because your adrenaline is going, and if you're not ready for that feeling of, oh my gosh, what is happening? Am I going to be okay? Then, it's very easy to let that take over and to treat it as fear. So the first thing is to realize what it is. It's adrenaline. And actually, it's the same process in your body that happens when you're excited. So if you can channel that energy from fear into excitement, you'll actually be a lot more successful. And then the second thing is to remember, what helps me. I'm a super introvert. I hate being the center of attention. However, I love being on stage and I love speaking. And the reason I can reconcile the two things is because for me, speaking is not about me. It's about showing up to serve.
That's right.
So the more attention that I can get, the more good conversations I can have, the more out there I can be, that, people are not just looking at their phones when I'm speaking. That means that the more I am serving. And so it actually helps me to say, okay, this is not about me. It's not about how I look. It's not about whether or not I embarrass myself. It's not about whether I stutter a little bit, which I do, and I lose my place sometimes, and I have to rethink what I was going to say. You don't have to be polished in order to provide value.
I love that. And I love that reframe. I think that's great across the board for speaking, but also for media. I'm showing up to serve. So anyone watching this right now, write that down. Use that as a powerful tool and reframe of, if you are fearful, if you have doubts or roadblocks, I am showing up to serve. I love that so much. So let's also talk about stories. Now, as a former journalist, stories, like we are storytellers, and they're one of the most powerful tools in communication. I teach this in media training that if you want to be remembered and understood and relatable, you need to tell a story. So, and look, you told a story in the very beginning where your friend Dory was like, oh, I think you should do this. And you're like, people are going to remember that by listening. So what do you think makes a story memorable and impactful?
That's a great question. So I say this on my weekly webinar every single week, right? I could show up and I could say, well, you need to research 12, you need to send 120 speaking engagements emails. We send 1,000 pitches a week. We do all of this stuff. I could show up and say that, or I could tell you a story about me that shows why I'm effective, right? People remember stories. So the way that I think about storytelling for myself and my clients, I lean into a few things. First of all, I lean into who are you and what have you done, which sounds really simple, but you can actually meditate on that and be getting collateral out of that forever, right? I actually haven't posted this just yet, but I was working on a LinkedIn newsletter earlier today about the time that I ran into Lin-Manuel Miranda in the drama bookshop right before I had a rehearsal. And I was like, this is the best omen. And of course I froze and didn't introduce myself and posted this very cringy post about how I had made eye contact with Lin-Manuel Miranda. That to me is a story that I wouldn't have thought to put out on content had I not been doing this exercise of who are you and what have you done, right? I tell you lean into the stories that make people say, wow, oh my God, wait, tell that again. That really happened. And then you can find the business application for it. The other thing I lean into is big claims. Now the claims have to be true, right? You can't make stuff up, but the big claims of well, I started my business with literally 5 hours a week to clients. What I usually share and didn't, because I didn't want to talk for too long, was that I was making $15,000 a year as a jazz musician in New York. And 5 hours a week, I had maybe $3,000 in my checking account, and that was it. And I was one bad flu away from not being able to pay my rent. I was living on $5 a day, And my 5-hour-a-week clients probably made me more money in my first month than I had ever seen professionally, right? So, telling some of those stories, those are really big claims. Now I have $1 million business, $1 million+ business, right? So having the big claims, they have to be true, but that anchors you. It says, okay, like there's some real proof behind it. The other thing I lean into is what makes you unique. So I do a lot of telling. I love theater. I love Broadway. I tell a lot of Broadway show stories and what the business applications are. So if there's something that you really love that's kind of quirky, like if you're a horse, if you like horseback riding, or if you were a figure skater as a kid or whatever it is, lean into those things and have that be part of your differentiation when you tell stories.
Oh, I love that. And it's like, don't be fearful if it's too quirky, because people want, I feel like people want to know the human in you. It makes you more human, less robotic, which in the media, I always tell people, like, I don't want a robot to show up on air. Show me the human side of you. Like, what makes you tick, right? What is the weird thing, like not weird, but quirky things about you that might connect you with others? So I love that you use Broadway as an example. And I'm not a musician, but I'm a dancer, and I'm almost 42 years old. I still dance. I take tap, ballet, and hip hop classes 3 times a week. And and like, that's my quirk that I'm like, okay, now you're reminding me, I should probably talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, it works. My LinkedIn newsletter is this really quirky thing. I once had a big tech company marketing team reach out to me cold, and they were my client for a year. They were my biggest client and my biggest monthly retainer for social media ever. And it was all because they found me because of my LinkedIn newsletter, which, I can't even speak to the value of doing something really weird. So what I love is like, what I learned from my tap teacher or something like that, what I learned from my tap teacher, or what I learned from, the Broadway show Some Like It Hot because it has tap in it, right? Like you could lean into stuff like that.
I love that. Okay, so for folks that are watching, what are some important elements that separate a forgettable story and one that really resonates with an audience?
Mm-hmm. The crazier, the better. That's the big thing. Is like the more unexpected, the better, right? And don't be afraid to lean into stuff. Don't be afraid to, what makes a great story when you're out with your friends, and you're out with a group of friends at a bar and you tell a story and everybody cracks up, or everybody's like, wait a minute, what? You lean into that. We are all our whole selves all the time. And so telling great stories has that same magic on stage. And the best speakers, by the way, are the ones who make you feel like you're with a group of friends at a bar.
That's exactly right.
Right.
It's
so
for media too.
Yeah, exactly. Details, crazy stories, something that is memorable. People will be retelling your story forever if they can remember it.
Yep. And I love that. And I always tell people, because sometimes it's like, oh my God, I don't know. Where do I start with a story? Think of one thing you're proud of, because I know it'll lead to something that's meaningful and specific, and therefore a story. So for anyone out there, you're like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start with the stories. One is like, what am I most proud of right now? What am I most proud of in my business? And then think of a story behind that. Start there. I love that. Okay. So when, I want to talk a little bit about how we speak to our audience's pain points and how we turn our audience into clients. So I know this, especially from the media standpoint, and you can speak to it from a speaking standpoint. People tune in when they feel seen and understood. How can speakers and experts identify and speak directly to their audience's pain points?
So this is really, really important. And Ashley, you and I know a lot of the same people. We are all really good people, and we got into business for really good reasons, right? We want to inspire, we want to impact, we want to change the world. Those are all very, very good things. And they're not enough to get people to open their wallets and buy from you, right? People buy for 2 reasons. First, because they're trying to solve pain. And second of all, because they're trying to solve a problem.
That's right.
So in order to get people to trust you, you have to be able to speak to their pain. You have to be able to and you want to speak to the biggest version of the pain possible. As an example, I have a weekly webinar. The most successful one that I have is called 5 Ways to Grow Your Revenue in 2025. Notice I'm not saying 5 ways to get on stage. I'm not saying 5 ways to get more followers, even though all of those things are the implications that I do. I am speaking to the biggest problem that my solutions solve, which is revenue. I work with business owners. If you work with business owners, in general, you're solving a revenue problem in some way, right?
That's right. That's right. I love that. And I love how also specific you are in sharing that too, because that instantly draws somebody like me and a business owner. It's like, yeah, I want to know the answers to all of that. Okay. So identifying their pain points. Tell me a little bit about how we can structure a talk or even a media interview so that it naturally leads to business opportunities. Because here's the one thing that the feedback I get, I don't want to sound too salesy, and I guarantee the press doesn't want them to sound too salesy. And I bet it's the exact same for speaking too.
Yeah, exactly. Even if now there's a lot of speak to sell stages, right? That even when you're on a speak to sell stage, you don't want to sound salesy, right? So the way that I like to structure talks, I do this with my TEDx clients, and I find it works really well for a keynote, is to have a big story. So for example, if we're going to take my, I was making $15,000 a year story, right? You start in the drama, you give the pain, right? I was, what is $15,000 a year? That's $1,200 a month. I was $750 and $725 in rent. I had nothing but a bed, a piano, and my cat. And, I would start there, right? Draw the pain out. Then you go into your solutions, you go into a little bit of the research behind things, you start to give some takeaways. You come back to the story every once in a while and give a little bit more color and detail. And then you end with the result, right? You might even put some case studies in there. That always helps. But you always end with the hero's journey. You end with, okay, here's how it turned out. Right now, I have a thriving business. I have employees. I have, $1 million+ in revenue every year, and growing, that kind of thing. You show people the real big tent poles of how you do it and what the result means for them. And that's when you can do a pitch, right? You can say, look, here's how you can work with me. And what I find works online and sometimes in person is giving a really big tent pole for here's the high ticket, and then here's a low ticket, and that's really specific numbers. So I'll anchor with like, well, you're not going to spend less than $10,000 to work with me privately, but you also have this $299 or $297 thing, right?
I love that.
And it's quick. It's really quick. I've spent a lot of time on story. I spent a lot of time building people up to feel really good and show how I can solve their problems. And then great, reach out to me if this is a good fit. Let's spend a couple minutes talking and figuring it out.
I love that. And something I want to call out that makes speaking so similar to media outreach is identifying the audience's pain points. It's the exact same thing in the media that I teach. When you're thinking of a media pitch, identify the problem and be the solution, right? So think like we're working with an expert right now. There's daylight savings coming up. People lose sleep over daylight savings. So as an expert who can focus on sleep, what tips can he or she offer as we approach daylight savings? Boom. That's gotten one of our clients 3 interviews in the past, 3 TV interviews in the last 24 hours. So I do want to just highlight how important identifying your audience's pain points are and specifically speak to them, just like you did, Marie, when talking about the revenue. that is probably someone's pain point of somebody who wants to work with you. They're coming to you because they want speaking to help increase their revenue. So, okay, I have 2 other questions. Tell me about what you've seen happen with your clients once they start securing speaking engagements. I'd love to hear, like, they came to you, they had their pain point, and as a result, what did you see happen?
Yeah, and that's great. And I just want to point to something that you said about your client with the daylight savings. So first of all, striking while the iron is hot is really, really important. And seizing the opportunity. Second of all, that's one of the big pain points. The 3 big pain points are health, wealth, and love. You did a brilliant job at positioning it for sleep, right? And saying like, so I just wanted to commend you because like what a brilliant show of pain points. That's great. So,
you're right. It is health, wealth, and love. And even in the media for pitching, that is truly what you can look at first of like, if you're trying to decide the pitch angle that you want to go for, start with that. And it's going to, I guarantee you, it will lead to a media opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. That's fantastic. So to answer your question, sorry, I couldn't let that pass me by.
I love it.
So I've had a lot of success, both myself and my clients, The big thing that I noticed earlier in my career, I was just a consultant. I was like, I don't want to be on stage.
Mhm.
Especially in COVID, I didn't see the horizon. And I got asked to speak at a coaching summit, like a membership coaching group. And I thought, great. It was a known name in my field because I work with a lot of coaches. I was like, great, this is good social proof. I'll show up. And they wanted me to present on LinkedIn. I was like, awesome. uh, Started preparing, and then a week before I got an email and they said, okay, well, we hope you're ready because 17,000 coaches have signed up.
Whoa!
Yeah. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? That has to be.
You're like, breathe into the paper bag, breathe into the paper bag.
Exactly. I was like, and it was 2021. People weren't vaccinated yet for the most part. And so nobody was going outside. It was virtual.
Wow.
I had no idea 17,000 coaches in the world existed, really, like,
Yeah.
and just to give you an idea of physical mass of that, most Broadway theaters are 2,500 seats at
Yep.
most. Radio City 6,000. So this remains to be the biggest audience I've ever seen. Of course, not everybody showed up live that day. There were several thousand, and then more watched later. And this particular group had a no pitch policy. And so I just really focused. I was like, I'm not going to pitch. But of course, I have a very Googleable name. I have a very Googleable business, right? I am findable. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. And my books filled up. My books were completely full for months and months and months. And that one gig ended up adding $500,000 to my business. And I was like, okay, there's something here. There is really something here, something to be said for showing up and providing value and speaking. And that ARR didn't go away, right? Like because it had momentum to my business, it's really built. So I've seen my clients do, hundreds of thousands of dollars from one stage.
Wow.
You go to one event, especially if you have a high ticket offer, right? If you fly somewhere, even, I'm going in a couple weeks, I'm going to a friend's mastermind, 20 of my ideal clients are there. If I make one client, that's what, $20,000 in revenue over time. I've paid for it, right? If you go and you speak somewhere and you get 2 clients, how much in revenue is that? It's a huge amount of revenue compared to what you've paid to go.
That's right. And I love that you gave the example of the virtual speaking setting where you did get clients and your books were filled up for months, because that's one thing that people are like, oh, I'd rather do in-person media versus virtual. Or I'm sure you hear this a lot. I'd rather do in-person speaking versus virtual. But it sounds like, I'm just curious from your standpoint, the ROI on, or do you see a comparison of like, or preference of in-person versus virtual speaking engagements? Because what I heard from you is that virtual have just as much as an impact as potentially speaking does.
Yeah, could have more, right? And it really depends. And that's part of the reason that consistency is so important, is because you don't know what stage is going to work out in the way that you want it to, right? So one stage might be a dud and you get 0, and you didn't know that until you showed up, right? One virtual summit speaking engagement could yield $20,000 in clients or revenue or whatever it is. One in-person speaking engagement could do, $10,000 or whatever it is. You have to be working the thing and doing the reps, because you just don't know how things are going to pan out until you show up. So speaking is an investment. Same thing with the media. It is an investment, whether it's in person or virtual. It's your time, it's your energy, and everything like that. And you have to show up and be ready to shine in a way, because, otherwise you're wasting the opportunity.
Yeah, that's where the practice comes in. This is why I offer media training. Like if you want to get prepped for a media interview, we help you here at Nardi Media. So I want to know this, Marie, for folks that are watching or will watch later, and they're like, I've been thinking about speaking for so long. I want to get started. What is one simple action step that they can take today to get started on their speaking journey?
That's great. So just get out there and do your own webinar, do a LinkedIn Live. That's the biggest thing. That is a way that you can do it in a way that doesn't require a lot of time for you, doesn't require a lot of energy or money or anything like that. I do a weekly webinar, and it's been the best thing for my business, hands down, because I still have people, by the way, I don't have a huge list. I still have people who see me for the first time and go, oh my God, I haven't talked to you in a year. You're doing webinars. I'm showing up this week. So, really just show up, even if one person shows up. And by the way, that is not a failure. I know it really sucks when you have a webinar and 2 people show up live or whatever it is. That's okay. It is not a failure.
That's
That's
right.
two of your ideal clients, right?
That's right.
So show up, give them the energy, and then build from there.
That's amazing. Okay, Marie, people are wondering, where do I want to talk to Marie. How can people find you? And like, full disclaimer, I work with Marie. She's amazing. She is kicking butt for me and my speaking. So you have the full testimony from me, a happy client. Marie, where can folks find you to reach out and learn more about your amazing services?
Well, thank you so much. By the way, I'm having a blast working with you, and I know we're just building and building and building, and I'm excited to see you in person. I know you're coming up, and we're gonna do good stuff together. So yeah. So the way to find me is go to my website, incontrera.com. That's my last name, INCONTRERA.com. I have a 20-minute consultation on there. That's really the easiest way to kind of have a next step with me. Is we have a consultation. We see if we're a good fit. If we are, great. If not, I'm always happy to have provided value. So that's really the next step. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram and kind of all the socials, and just follow me and let's continue the conversation.
I love it. Okay, I have to ask one more question. Do you still play jazz music around town?
Well, yes, sometimes, very, very little. What I'm doing right now is I'm writing 2 musical theater works, and trying to get myself to Broadway, which is a very, very long road if it happens. And I'm kind of working the off-Broadway circuits and things like that now. So yes, I still do music. I get to do it in a way that I don't have to worry about getting paid for it. Yeah. Which means that I get to do the work I love. So that for me, it works, and it makes me very happy. That's my 5 to 9.
I love it. That's so beautiful. And I have to say, from one business owner to another, congratulations on all of your success. I love the work that you're doing. It's so important. And just coming back to really being of service, I like that is your value is my value. That's really how we see things here at Nardi Media, which is why I was so excited about working with you, because I felt that from you. So for folks that are thinking of speaking, Marie is your gal. I'm so excited. Please reach out to her. Marie, thank you for your time today. It's always a joy and pleasure to see you, but especially on LinkedIn Live. Yeah. And for everyone watching, we want to hear from you. You can drop any comments. What did you learn today? What questions do you have for Marie about speaking, or for me about PR? We'll be happy to answer them even after this LinkedIn Live ends. So thank you for your time, everyone. Marie, you are awesome. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.